Can you share? Welcome back to Turning Hard Times into Good Times. I'm your host, Jay Taylor, and I'm really glad to have with me the President and CEO of Novo Resources, Dr. Qninton Hennigh. Thanks for joining me again, Qninton.
Thank you, Jay.
You know, on March 7th, you put out a press release informing investors as to how Novo plans to progress its Beaton's Creek Witwatersrand type deposit, as well as its nearby Blue Spec high-grade gold and antimony deposit. Can you share the basic content of that March 7th press release with our listeners? Perhaps talk about Beaton's Creek project first, what your plans are for that project going forward, and then after addressing that, perhaps give us an update on the most recent news coming out of the Blue Spec property.
Sure thing, Jay. So at Beaton's Creek, to give people a little background, we've been moving it towards a gravity-only mine. This would be a mine, very simple mine where we mine the reefs near surface using simple equipment. It's all free dig. We're mining oxide material that's quite soft, and then we process that through a gravity mill. That was the original intent. We started this initiative a little over 18 months ago, of course, when the market was very poor in the gold sector. We've advanced the thing considerably since then. We did test mining last year that demonstrated very good grades or grade reconciliation, more to the point, that suggests this thing should work like a charm. Now, in the process of doing that trial mining, we did some processing of the material. The 30,000 tons we dug, we processed about a third of it through a small gravity plant to determine the grade. This was a process that involved crushing the rock down to about, say, fine gravel size, taking out the coarse gold using our gravity recovery equipment, and then analyzing the tailings that came out of it. One of the steps we did at the very end was to collect a composite sample of tailings from that gravity mill. We then subjected those to cyanidation tests. I did it just to see what kind of recoveries we might expect from cyanide, from the tailings from the gravity circuit. And the results were kind of jaw-dropping. There were several parts to the results that just really, really stood out. One was the grade of the tailings came in higher than predicted, so that was very encouraging. But the other aspects relate to the recovery and the amount of cyanide and so forth that was used. So the recovery was astounding. It was greater than 97% using cyanide within 12 hours. That tells us that this material can leach very, very easily, very, very quickly. The gold is all free, and it can be recovered virtually, with a half a day using cyanide. That's just kind of astounding. They have to have 8 or 12 leach tanks to give the residents time for material to leach, which, usually leaches on order of a couple of days at least. So this leaches very quickly. The second aspect, the grind size. This stuff leaches even at a very coarse grind size of 212 microns, which was the coarsest test we did. We got over 97% recovery again within 12 hours. The next aspect, the amount of cyanide and another reagent called lime that we use was very low. The cyanide consumption was only 0.15 kilo per ton, which is quite low. So we stepped back and looked at the results and thought, let's see how this might impact our plans. We then went back to our process engineer. We discussed the results in context of our plans to build a gravity-only mine, and looked at the trade-offs for replacing the complex gravity circuit that we were developing, and actually, quite frankly, virtually had done. We've effectively engineered most of it. Anyway, we've looked at how we could shift the gravity circuit or condense it down to just take out the coarse gold and then bring in cyanide to recover the remaining gold. So we've stepped back, looked at that, and we now have I'll call it a 30,000-foot view that it would be much more favorable economics. First of all, the recoveries that we would see would go from about 80% with the gravity-only scenario up to about 98% using cyanide. The second effect is the capital. So much to my surprise, I got to be frank, much to my surprise, the capital for a similar scale, meaning 2,000-ton-a-day operation, the capital for a cyanide plant versus a gravity-only plant is only marginally higher.
Wow.
So the third thing was, look, bottom line, it impacts the MPV on the order of, an increase of 60% over what we were predicting with the gravity-only plant.
Wow.
Yeah, so from my perspective, this is one of those no-brainer kind of things. Now, other aspect is that because of the higher recovery, our production goes up. So now we're targeting something that could produce considerably more gold. Basically, we're looking at a conventional mine scenario now. both in terms of mining, the scale of mining, as well as processing using gravity CIL. All right, so the next thing I had to look at was the resource we have. We drilled out a shallow resource with the aim of building this mine. There's plenty of room for expansion. So I've decided to undertake a program to both enhance the resource, where there's some inferred we can convert to indicated, but also grow that resource in preparation for this additional, this new scenario. Mm-hmm. One of the things we can look at now is we don't have to just focus on oxide. We can look at the fresh rock as well. Fresh rock is non-refractory. It's easily treatable in a gravity CIL mill. So now we can start taking our blinders off and looking at the bigger picture.
Well, that's really interesting. Is this going to set you back in terms of the timing for production, though, Qninton? And what about your economics? I know you were planning a PEA sometime this year.
Look, Dave, to be frank, we had the PEA done. We were waiting on the last data, and we were going to publish it here shortly. We are now going to back off and look at the cyanide scenario. I'll be flat out with that. Okay, so that's where our mindset is at. The other thing that, we've been looking around at finance. The market was absolutely horrendous late 2015. Kind of picked up last year. Then it went to, back in the dumper. Late last year. Even lately, it's kind of touch and go. To be frank, it's difficult to fund the gravity only. While it can be done and done cheaply and so forth. When we take it to people, they look and they say, "Well, this is not conventional." They want to see CIL in there, okay? Mm-hmm. And now we're moving to what is more conventional. Basically, this kind of technology is tried and true, well proven. So, the finance community is going to be more receptive to this than looking at the gravity only and, scratching their head wondering if we're going to achieve recoveries and all the equipment we're using, if it's going to break down and this and that. This is, in our view, a much easier sell to get the thing financed. So, yes, it will put us back a few months. I'm not talking about a lot of months. We're actually doing the resource work now. But, say 3 or 4 months for resource work, resource upgrade, and then a couple of months additional to get the PEA out on a gravity CIL scenario. So, yes, it is going to take a little bit longer, but it's going to produce a much better result.
Qninton, what is the possibility of increasing your resource there with the oxides? And I guess maybe you're not just limiting yourself to oxides, but clearly they're on the surface, cheaper to mine. What is the possibility of increasing your resource from, I believe your oxides are just slightly under 500,000 ounces at this time. Is there a good chance of increasing the resource there at Beaton's Creek?
Yeah, our current resource measured and indicated is about 300,000. Our inferred adds another 260,000. That's all near surface, within, say, 20 meters of surface. These are very shallow deposits. Yes, in short, we can expand that significantly. We're looking at growing both the oxide and the sulfide. The resource that we published is a composite of oxide and sulfide, so bear that in mind. We think we can increase that on the order of 50 or 60% in terms of overall size fairly easily, cheaply, and quickly. We also think we can upgrade much of the inferred we have presently to indicated, which would put it into the category of potentially being converted to reserve once we go in that direction.
Well, this is really exciting. I think the economics are going to be, they look pretty good before just on the gravity, but now if you can add that carbon and leach process, it looks really, really exciting. And I know you have a lot of upside potential on the exploration front. But Qninton, with just a couple of minutes left, talk to us briefly about Blue Spec. That's a high-grade, structurally controlled deposit, vertically orientated, I believe, and nearby Beaton's Creek. Is there a chance that once you have a milling operation, that you can also process that material at the same mill? Is that a possibility?
Parts of the mill could be used for the Blue Spec, and that's one aspect we're considering. Okay, Blue Spec is metallurgically much different, but we can crush and grind using the same components on the front end of the mill. Mm-hmm. And yes, there could be potential synergy there. So that is one aspect we're considering. There's also lots of water out at Blue Spec for processing.
All right. Can you tell us a little bit about, just briefly comment on the results that you published here back on March 7th at Blue Spec? And what are your plans for Blue Spec with about a minute and a half left? Okay.
We drilled at Blue Spec. We drilled several targets. People can look back through the news releases to see where we focused. We focused around the existing deposits at Gold Spec and Blue Spec. All the holes proved that the resources expanded sustainable. There's plenty of room. It's wide open, down plunge down, adjacent to existing resources. So we feel very optimistic we can make the thing grow. We did make several new discoveries. There's 2 targets out east of Blue Spec in particular that have returned very favorable results. You can look back at a news release here in the past week and one about 4 weeks ago that described those results. At Blue Spec, we feel very confident now we can we see a mine or potential for a deposit that can become a mine, and doing that, in tandem, we'll call it, with Beaton's Creek, where we advance the exploration at Blue Spec, but also bring potential cash flow from Beaton's Creek to look at advancing Blue Spec towards production. That's the overall strategy.
All right, very good. Well, just in summary then, what should investors be looking for this year as drivers for the share price?
Yes, this year we've got a lot of resource work going on right now. You'll see some results probably in the next few weeks, and then sometime in about 3 months you'll see a resource upgrade, hopefully significant, and then we'll have that economic study done sometime early Q3. That'll bring in the CIL component. We should have very good handle on costs and stuff at that point. We've already got most of the numbers worked out. I think then you'll see us move towards production. We have got a lot of permitting stuff already done, and it's underway. So you'll see some news around that, as well as potentially financing this deposit.
It's really exciting. It's still my top pick. It's the stock that I have the largest percentage of my portfolio in, so I'm watching with great anticipation. Qninton, I want to thank you very much for being with us and look forward to keeping up with your story on an ongoing basis. Thank you again for being with us today.
Thank you, Jay.